Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to you all. Sorry to keep you for a minute there. Just having some connection issues. Hope everybody can hear me. Let me make sure the chat is on. There we go. You should be able to chat. Is the chat working? How is everybody? Hi, Michaela. Hello, Naeem. Natalie, Eugenia, Andre, visuals are good. That is good news. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for that feedback, Andre. Nabalelo. Hello, Debbie from the east of Joburg. Welcome to you. Hi, Andres, and hello, Leslie Ann. Where's everybody joining from? I'm in Durban. It is a pretty mild spring day. Got Joburg, from Cape Town. How's the weather in Cape Town there, Hubert? Hi, Keegan. Welcome from Joburg. Natalie in Witbank. TNT, welcome to you from Durbs as well. Zizikele also from Durbs, I think. Try to keep up. I can see the messages coming in. Hi, Cindy, Joburg as well. Chilly in Cape Town, but the sun is shining. That's good. Out of the very brutal Cape Town winter. I hope you're done with all of that. Hi, Victoria from Namibia as well. Mbelela from Bloem, Boksburg. Wonderful. Start sharing this in the meantime. Going to get started very shortly. A lot of Joburgs. Babawa from Harrismith. How are things in Harrismith? Beautiful town, city, Harrismith. North of the Drakensberg. Hey, you should be able to see my presentation about now as well. I'm going to do my normal check. Hard to be as put. Hi, Raphael. Welcome, Arties. How many of you have attended one of these webinars before? Just to raise a hand if you have. Good. See your hands going up. Okay, good. Quite a few of you have. Wonderful. Welcome back. Good to have you all here. Good. Who's joining for the first time? You can raise your hand. Okay, good. Quite a few of you. So it's quite hard to tell with the hands exactly what the split is. It doesn't give me a breakdown, but it's about half or so, just based on what I can see. So that's great. A lot of new names and faces. Welcome to you. My name is James Sturdee. I am a registered psychological counselor. I'm a therapist in private practice in Morningside, in Durban. I'm also part of the Regent Business School counseling services. Have been for the last, I want to say, anyone is interested in setting up a student counseling session that is available to all Regent students. You're welcome to also drop me an email. I'm counseling at regent.ac.za and get me on that. You can always set up a confidential counseling session if for whatever reason you need to. I've just put my email in the chat if you need to get hold of me for whatever reason. So yeah, I'm a therapist. I've been practicing since 2010, October of 2010. I was registered, been licensed since then. I worked at a number of hospitals in and around Durban, doing mostly designing and facilitating group therapy programs. And then I went into private practice in about 2016. So yeah, this is my 9th year of private practice. And I've been, as I said, working with Regent much of that time as well, at least it's about 2016, 2017. Yeah, so I am interested in a number of things psychologically. Essentially, the day-to-day issues that I deal with in my practice, my clinical practice, are things like trauma and stress and anxiety and some depression, grief and relationship issues and anger management and emotional regulation. I'm very interested in self-compassion, I'm interested in this idea of childhood emotional neglect and how it affects us. This is what I did my master's dissertation on. So these are the type of things that I cover on a day-to-day basis. And these webinars that we're doing here really are a way of trying to share some of the ideas or thoughts or experience I have just in terms of emotional well-being and how to really optimize that. I mean, I think the idea of optimizing is a very 2025 idea. Maybe it's a bit overdone. But it is, what we're trying to do in these webinars is just to expose you guys to some of these ideas around psychology that you might have into contact with, maybe necessarily understand fully, and just speak a little bit about those. So we speak management and what it means to deal with anxiety and depression. And today we will be speaking about nutrition. So how does nutrition and diet affect our mental well-being? So you would have noticed in my little blurb about myself, my bio, and in no way have I ever had any experience as a dietitian. So just keep that in mind as we speak through this. You are not speaking to a dietitian in this webinar. I do not have that type of expertise. So don't take this as any type of dietary advice or any expertise in that regard. I hope that you'll be very clear on that. What I am going to try to talk to you about is just the links between diet, the food we put in our bodies, and our mental health. That's where my angle is on this. That's where my expertise is. So in my get a little bit of, I'll kind of share what the research might say on that. But ultimately, we should be responsible for our diets ourselves. And you should always, take with a healthy pinch of salt anybody who's telling you should follow any type of diet. It really should come from your own discretion and getting your own advice on that. So don't take any of this as health advice or dietary advice necessarily. The idea is just to take you through a few of the key ways, or a few of the key diets, perhaps I could say, that are quite instrumental in treating mental health issues, but also in facilitating emotional wellness and psychological wellness, just in terms of mood and cognition and attention and concentration and memory, and all those things that really matter to us. So I'm going to take you through some of those ideas. Feel free to put chat in the chat as we go. I'll keep an eye on it as much as I can. It's just short of 70 of us, so I'll probably better keep an eye mostly on that. But there will be time for Q&A towards the end of the hour. So just before, probably about 10 to 2 or so, we'll have a bit of time just to chat around any of the things that come up as well. Okay. Great. So if everyone's ready, let's dive into it. So the reason diet matters is because if you think about it, it really is the fuel that we are putting into our bodies, right? And I think we have a sense for how diet might affect our physical health. If you're running a marathon, you're probably not going to have KFC the night before. You might be a little bit more conscious about the way that you fuel your body. We have this understanding, I think, that our physical health, our strength, our energy levels are all pretty much linked to what we eat. And you can see that, right? If we eat badly, often we can feel a bit lethargic, or we can feel a bit unwell. So there's a very clear idea, I think, that we have between how the nutrition, how we kind of fuel our bodies affects our physical health. But we often neglect how it might actually affect our emotional well-being. And we shouldn't, because there's a very significant link that's there, right? Any type of emotion you're having is not happening in on a spiritual level, on a kind of, this something that's happening outside of our biology. It's happening very much as an emergent property of our brains, right? And our brains run on the nutrients, the fuel that we give them. So it follows that the way that we eat would have an effect on the way that we feel and the way that we think, and then also our kind of cognitive capacities. Again, our concentration, our memory, our attention. It makes a lot of sense that our food and our diet would affect that. And I think we kind of maybe understand it, but probably don't really recognize how powerful those links can be, and how much we can really determine our mental health by the quality or the lack of quality of our diet. So when I think about emotional well-being, I think about these three pillars that we have. So it's more than just these three things. But if these three things are out of sync, you're probably going to find that your mental health is suffering. these are the things to go back to. So for any reason you're struggling with low mood or anxiety, any type of mental health challenge, the first thing to do would be to go back and say, well, exercise, sleep, diet, how am I doing on the three things? And if you find that they're all good, well, then you have to start looking a bit deeper and saying, okay, well, what else is causing me to feel the way that I'm feeling? And, very often there will be other things. It makes a lot of sense to start with those things. So sleep, this is something that's taken on a huge amount of scientific relevance in the last 10, 15 years, even more, even less long ago than that. But ultimately, we understand that most adults, within the 20 to 60 age cohort, need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And if you have less than that, then you start to see a lot of the metrics start to go off a cliff. So your mood will start to drop, energy levels will drop, concentration, attention, memory, all of these things will start to decrease. And then there's a whole lot of downstream health effects as well to that, physical health effects. So yeah, sleep is so important for our physical health, so important for our psychological well-being as well. Exercise as well. Exercise is this thing that can make you feel good about yourself. It releases endorphins. It's good for your physical health. It's really good for problem solving and creativity and stress management. It's the type of thing that if you could take it in a pill, it would cost R1 million just for that pill, but it's free. That's not my saying, that's someone else. I can't remember who that is, but that's worth just pausing on to say this thing that we get through exercise, which is so effective, is something that actually a lot of people would pay a lot of money for. A really important pillar of mental health. And then, of course, the focus of today's discussion is diet. So how are we eating? What are we eating? How often are we eating? What are we putting into our bodies? How are we fueling our brains? The problem with diet, and this is more so than with the other two, exercise and sleep, is that it's really, really hard to stay. Sorry, guys. I think I dropped out. That's an issue my side. I'm back. Okay. Good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, a lot of us have been having internet issues this week. I heard something about a cable that had gone down. I haven't looked into that. You guys might know more about that than me, but my internet has been a nightmare. But yeah, let's get back. Yeah, so Shawnee, you can find the recording on the employability site. It'll all be uploaded there, as I'm sure some of you, that's normally a question that comes up. So yeah, you'll be able to find the recording on there. Yes, so it's hard to measure. It's hard to measure diet because how do you do it, right? It's hard to put human beings into a full laboratory setting where you're measuring their diet because and we do it to some extent, but ultimately over a long period of time, it's hard to kind of quiet out all the other variables. So different metabolic rates and different preferences and different ways of people process their food. All of that is really complicated. And then people are kind of living their lives in different ways as well. So it's hard to separate correlation from causation. So people who drink a glass of wine every night, well, they might have less, risk of heart disease. But is that just because people who drink a glass of red wine every night also exercise in the morning? It's very difficult to separate all these things. And that's partly the reason why, and I say this carefully, maybe, but the field of dietetics, so nutrition studies, has been so kind of fragmented and conflicted, and if you ask everybody, no one really is going to tell you exactly what the best diet is, because there's many people as you ask, and maybe as many dietitians as you ask, you're going to start to get very different answers. So that makes it quite hard to know what is actually what's going on there, right? What does it matter? Are we allowed to have sugar? Is sugar bad for us? What about alcohol? Is it moderate alcohol okay, or is no alcohol okay? What about carbs? Are carbs good or bad? All of this is very much not very well understood. And again, I'm not a dietitian, so I can't speak with a lot of expertise on that. But we can again speak about how these things might affect mental health, and there's a lot of research on that. So your brain is the hungriest organ of your body, so consuming 20% of your energy daily. So think about that. Think about the size of your brain, and it's for every 5 things that you eat, one of it is going straight to your brain. That's one way of thinking about it. Raphael, I would rather not comment on whether drinking a glass of red wine a day is a good thing. It again depends who you ask. There have been studies that say that it's fine, and now some studies say any alcohol is not good for you. So these things are highly contested. Yeah. So your brain is very, very hungry. A lot of the nutrients, a lot of the energy you're eating is going straight to it. And that again points to the importance of, well, maybe it's worthwhile paying attention to the quality of the food that we're putting in. And if we're just eating chips all day or, sweets, how effective is our brain going to be powered? How effective is our brain going to be running if that's the energy that it's getting? So essentially, a very basic process. Maybe it's not basic, but we can make it simple just for this because, again, I'm not a dietitian or a biologist. But when you eat, your food gets broken down into nutrients. This gets taken into your bloodstream, and then some of it is carried through the blood-brain barrier into your brain. There they can replenish the storage, cellular reactions that become a part of our brain as nutrients. Our brains need obviously different nutrients to function at its optimal level. So there's a very clear line between what we're eating, nutrients in the bloodstream into our brain. And then the research on this is really kind of convincing. It's quite solid that diet has a considerable effect on mood, on energy, on our cognitive ability, and also on our sleep. And now we start to see it actually being used to treat mental pathology. So not just in terms of limiting risk factors, but actually there are psychiatrists, and there is specifically a psychiatrist in the States who treats quite severe mental pathology with diet and is seeing some type of results there. And that if you speak to many psychiatrists and had spoken to many psychiatrists, in the last few decades, that would not have been something that they would have considered, to think that diet might be a way of actually treating mental ill health. But the research is starting to show that there might be something to that. So this is really worth paying attention to. Even if we're not suffering from significant poor mental health ourselves, it makes sense to be paying attention to our diets in a general way, to be able to understand how we can really, facilitate healthy psychological well-being through the energy we give our brains. And I think the thing with diet and food as well is it's not to over obsess on it necessarily. It's not to say, once we understand that diet is so important for our mental health, that we need to then be fixated and obsessed on everything that we eat, because that in itself might be counterproductive for our mental health. And it also might be a symptom of mental poor health, disordered eating. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to take you through three kind of ways of thinking about the way we eat and how it affects our brain. I'll speak a little bit about the gut microbiome, which I'm sure you guys are starting to hear of. That's something that's having a moment right now. We'll speak a little bit about ketogenesis as well, and then just kind of a broad, different kind of diet and how it can be effective as well. And by diet, again, I'm not saying a prescriptive diet, something that, you should have this many grams of protein in the morning. That's not what I'm going to share with you, but rather to say, well, there are certain cultures that eat in certain ways, and this is how we have kind of come to understand how that might affect them. Okay, so the gut-brain connection, this connection between our guts, our gastrointestinal tracts, and all of that goes on there, and our brains, is a really fascinating connection that's being understood increasingly over time. So there's a significant connection between these different parts of our bodies, and they're connected neurologically. So there's neural connections. There's also biochemical pathways. So neural connections are our nerves that actually kind of highways that can go from our gut to our brain and back. And then biochemical is the chemicals that are released and move in between our brains and our gastrointestinal pathways. So the gut microbiome is this ecosystem, if you want, this kind of ecology that happens inside our bodies, that mostly within our gut, which is our stomachs, our colons, intestines, and there are trillions of bacteria that are found here, or bacteria that are found there, viruses, fungi as well, trillions of them. So numbers that are beyond comprehension. So there are roughly 40 trillion bacterial cells in your body, and there are only 30 trillion human cells in your body. So think about that for a second. Your body is actually out, it's outnumbered by the bacteria in terms of just on a cellular count. But if you add them all up, they probably come to between 1 or 2 kgs in total. So that would be what is 1 kg? The weight, 2 blocks of butter. That's what it would feel like. About a jug of milk. That's how heavy it would be if you were to put all of these 40 trillion bacterial cells in your body. So there's a lot going on there. Yeah, and this is why the questions about the purpose of life are so interesting, and really come down to perspective. Because if you say, well, what's the purpose of life? You might say, well, my purpose of life, I don't know, it's to live a life that's meaningful, family and experiences. But then we have to say, well, what's the meaning of the life of the bacteria in your gut, right? What is their purpose of life? These are questions that are very much depend on who you are and where you are when you answer them. Yeah, I can't remember, Ryan, if it's Georgia Eddy or Edie. I'm not entirely sure. I think it was a Stanford psychologist. I might actually have their name later on in this presentation. I'll see. Yeah, Naeem, the vagus nerve is a really interesting one as well. That's often related to your autonomic nervous system. So that's your stress response, your fight or flight response. That's about that's the main nerve that goes and from your brain, your central nervous system into your body and kind of activate your fight or flight response sympathetically or parasympathetically. When you are in a fight or flight response, your gut actions slow down. So digestion and that type of thing is kind of put on the back burner because you should be fighting or flighting rather than processing the food. Short-term thing. But this connection between gut and brain is so interesting as well. And I think poetically and through literature, it's been understood for a long time, right? We kind of speak about that. I feel something in my gut, or some Yeah, so there's about 1,000 different species of bacteria, I'm told, in your gut, and they all have their own role to play. Some of them are not so good for you, but most of them are quite important for your health. And if you were to take them out of your body, you would be severely compromised. They're very necessary. These are very, what do they call it? It's symbiotic relationships, right? So you need them as much as they need you, for the most part. So some of these bacteria are associated with the disease, but most are really important for your immune system, for your heart, for your weight. They play all sorts of different roles, and also are very good in pro-health factors. So typically diversity is good. So the higher the microbiome diversity, the more different types of bacteria there are. This is often considered very good for your health, your physical health, and these benefits can include things like weight management, gut health, heart health, blood sugar, and diabetes, but then crucially as well for our conversation, brain health. So diversity there is good. And yeah, if you have a diverse microbiome, you are much more likely to be in good health. And if you have less bacteria, you would actually be in worse health. So this is kind of often a counterintuitive way of thinking about these things, because we often focus very much on the downsides of bacteria. Often that's external bacteria, right? Especially those of us who are a bit more germ phobic, who spend our lives. I say we, I'm actually not one of them. I'm quite chilled around germs, but a lot of people find germs very scary, and especially, I guess, after what we've gone through with COVID, spend a lot of our time trying to avoid bacteria and viruses. But we actually live with them on a day-to-day basis, and they're very, very good for us. Some of them, that is. Okay, so how do they work? Well, these gut bacteria are often producing neurotransmitters. So that's, well, our guts, sorry, are producing neurotransmitters, and this is facilitated through the bacteria in our gut as well. So things like serotonin, which is the happiness neurotransmitter, higher levels of serotonin and healthy transmission of serotonin in our brains is a indicator of higher mood normally. And dopamine, which is it's the feel good, the motivating neurotransmitter. So every time we kind of feel like we have achieved something, it's our reward chemical. Dopamine is a big part of that. Most of serotonin is made in the gut. That's an interesting fact as well. Not all of it crosses, actually, I don't think a lot of it crosses the blood-brain barrier, but there's more serotonin in our gut than there is in our brain. there's this connection of millions of nerves that kind of connects all of them. And again, you can kind of see this gut-brain connection that out of all of the different parts of our bodies, our brain has the most amount of neurons. Those are the cells in our brains that make up our brains, very unique to our brains. The second is our gut. So our gut is the second highest amount of neurons after our brain. So when you start to see it this way as well, you can see, well, there's some significant, and our guts, of course, is where the foods are being processed and then distributed around our bodies as well. So again, diversity is good. Diverse population of microorganisms shows this helps to regulate lots of parts of our brain's homeostasis, the way our body's homeostasis, the way our body regulates itself, and this is also the stress response. Good diversity has been linked to having a healthy stress response as well. But on the other hand, if we are stressed chronically over long periods of time, this can adversely affect the diversity in our microbiome, so the bacteria that we have, and then there's all sorts of consequences to this as well. So typically what we're looking for, again, is diversity. If we have a really healthy diversity in our microbiome and our gut bacteria, that normally, as I showed just now, it's good for weight management, it's good for stress management, it's good for our body's regulation. It's also good for mood, it's good for attention, it's good for concentration. There's a lot of upside. So what we want to do is we want to find ways of increasing this microbiome diversity. That's definitely what the science seems to be indicating at this point. So this can be probiotic or prebiotic foods. Probiotics are things that just introduce the bacteria to our guts. You can do this through medication and supplements, but normally with supplements, they never really work as well, according to my understanding, as actually just ingesting food itself. So that probiotics is actually introducing these bacteria. And then prebiotics is the food that we eat that kind of nurtures the bacteria that's already there. So probiotics is the actual bacteria. Prebiotics are the food for the bacteria and the environment of the bacteria. So you can use, often these foods are kind of fermented foods. Those are normally quite high in probiotics. So things such as yogurt and kefir and sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, these fermented foods are really, really kind of power foods when it comes to increasing the probiotics of our guts, the diversity in our microbiomes. You can also find it in foods like onions and bananas, asparagus, oats, whole grains. All of these tend to be quite high probiotics as well. But if you don't want to be too specific about it, it's normally not that easy to find things like kombucha in your local Checkers. Maybe it is, but maybe these days. But often these are quite hard to source. Yogurt's a little bit easier. But different yogurt has different amounts of probiotics as well. But the way to do it typically is just eat a diverse diet. So the rule of thumb that I saw a little while ago is if you can have 30 plants a week, this is typically very good. And it might sound like a lot, but you can get through that quite quickly. So coffee is considered a plant. That's good news. If you were to have a curry, you're having probably about 10 to 12 different plants just in that curry, and that you're having garlic and you're having lots of different spices. You're having onion and tomato. All of that is kind of checking a lot of those boxes. So you can get there quicker than you recognize, I think. But diversity is good. The more different things you're eating, the higher the probability that you're introducing healthy nutrients to your body generally, but also that you are introducing a gut bacteria that's going to be really helpful for you. Different types of fiber. That's also really good for feeding the beneficial bacteria. The negative thing, and this gets a lot of attention and it's quite well understood right now, is that processed foods, highly processed foods, typically those are not very beneficial for us for a number of different reasons, a number of different levels. So the more we can avoid the highly processed foods, the better. The more we can go back to just eating, whole foods. This is the easiest way to make sure that what we're eating is typically better for our brains. The reality, and I think the reason we find food quite a difficult thing and why we sometimes have problematic relationships with food is our brains and our bodies are evolved to consume food when we get it. This is we would have spoken about this in different webinars as well, this idea that we have brains for new worlds. So that our brains evolved in environments where there wasn't a abundance of food. There weren't supermarkets where you could go in and just help yourself to any food that you wanted at any time. It was more a case of, if you find food, well, that's scarce, so eat it when you can. So we evolved to really need the things that were rare in our environment, but that we really needed were things like fat, sugar, and salt. And so now when we find these things in our local environment, we find it very hard to resist. We find it very hard to not just overdo those. And our lizard brains often take over. So when you're kind of craving a certain type of food, that's really just your lizard brain saying, hey, feed me now, because I don't know when the next thing will be there. It takes your more developed and evolved intellectual part of your brain to say, I need to deprive myself of this thing right now, even though I'm kind of having a very physical craving for it, because I would be better off not having it. Processed foods tend to check a lot of those boxes. They're kind of designed to hijack our paleo tastes, our historic taste that we have. This is why the Americans eat bacon with syrup on it, because it has all of those things. It's got fat, it's got salt, and it's got lots of sugar as well. Sugar can be very, I don't have to, I'm not breaking any news here to say sugar can be very detrimental for our physical health, but also for our gut microbiomes as well. So the other thing with processed foods is they can have additives, and these can kill a lot of the bacteria in your gut. Artificial sweeteners perhaps do that as well. The research is a little bit mixed on that, but there is an indication that artificial sweeteners might also be not great for your microbiome diversity. Continue to improve it. So fiber intake, that's really good. That's gut lining as well. It's also just feeding these bacteria pets of ours. So fruits, vegetables, liquids, as I said, we can do that. You're doing really well. Omega-3, so essential fatty acids are great for mental health as well. This has been shown a lot. Really good for all of the different aspects of mental health. These are kind of fish oils. Fatty fish, salmon, sardines, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, you get these omegas in that. And then limit added sugars, artificial sweeteners. Again, the research isn't necessarily conclusive on that, but there's some research to indicate that these might be not so good for your microbiome. And then moderate alcohol consumption. So excessive alcohol consumption can negatively impact your gut health. And this probably is not too surprising either, to understand that the alcohol can be quite detrimental for our physical health and our mental health as well. There's research to indicate moderate use might be fine, but once you start getting into excessive use, you're going to be having a lot of detrimental side effects to that. Okay, the presentation will be on the employability website, the Regent employability website. It'll be up probably in the next few days, week or so. Okay, so yeah, microbiome, the gut microbiome, that's something that's getting a lot of research at the moment. Really interesting stuff there. The other one is ketosis. So ketosis hit South Africa, when was it? 15 years ago or so. It was we called it the Tim Noakes diet, triatlantic. This was massive, and every second person was doing it. And probably everyone who was doing it back then, most people have stopped by now. So it's what certainly was a fad, but there's a lot of science behind it right now as well. I'm just full disclosure, it's not something I do. I'm way too in love with carbs myself to do it, but it's interesting to understand some of the effects that it might have in terms of mental health as well. So effectively what we're talking about with ketosis is understanding how to change some of the metabolic processes in our digestive process. So metabolism basically is just this process of turning your food into energy. And I'm sure a lot of you would understand this better than I would, because I did biology up till about grade 10, I think. I don't think I did it further than that. So I'm no biologist. I did a bit of neurochemistry and a bit of neurology in varsity, but this is not my area. But essentially, for the layman, we can understand it as just this process of turning food to energy. And then ketosis is a specific metabolic state where your body burns fat for energy. So instead of burning sugar, it starts to burn fat. This is the ketosis state. So this can be achieved through certain types of fasting, intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating, or low-carb diets. So a lot of your sugars, of course, are found in carbs, and they get used. So when you're having less carbs, then you start to trigger this ketosis, this keto state, which I'll ask more about in a moment. The key here is when you are in ketosis, this has been shown to have significant benefits for physical health and also for increasing your mental health. This can also be achieved through fasting. So intermittent fasting also had a big moment a couple of years ago. This is also known as time-restricted eating. So that people would kind of restrict the eating to certain amounts of certain periods of the day. So you, for example, a 16-8 fast, which is for 16 hours you wouldn't eat, and then 8 hours you would eat within that period. It's actually quite easy to do. It sounds hard. It's really not, because most of that time I'm sleeping. I still do a lot of it these days. It's my lifestyle as well. But essentially, all that means is you eat the last thing. I think it's at like 8 o'clock at night, and then you don't eat until 12 o'clock the next day, which is not too extreme. I drink just black coffee in the morning. And yeah, essentially you've got 16 hours of fasting, and what that fasting is said to do is to introduce certain types of keto states. And there's a lot of other benefits as well that it comes with that are kind of beyond the scope of this topic, at least. The reason this is meant to be good for you is this is often how we were eating as well in our prehistoric times. We were hunter-gathering as well. So there would be, periods where we wouldn't be eating, and then periods where we would be kind of eating a bit more. And this kind of starts to allow our metabolic processes to work in ways that they have evolved to work, as opposed to just constantly grazing all day long. So yeah, I mean, again, don't take this too much as prescriptive advice. I'm not saying everyone should be doing time-restricted eating or keto. It just really depends. But it's also interesting to understand how these things affect our mental health. So Dawn, I've been doing intermittent fasting for the past 4 years. This seems to help me maintain our weight, 16 to 8 hours. Okay, that's great. Dawn, do you do the same window that I do? Is it evening until the midday? Okay. Yeah, nice. I mean, I think that works quite well. It's got to fit in with your lifestyle as well. Yeah, I mean, it does, or part of it is you kind of restrict your calories during that period, and then you can kind of, manage them during other periods of your day if you are focused on calories that you are consuming. Yeah, interesting. Thank you for that. Do you find a difference with mood as well? Do you find that it has any effects on your mental health? Whilst you're answering that. So yeah, there's a lot of research on keto and then severe mental health conditions, which I think is really fascinating. Okay, don't knock too much. Okay, fair enough. So typically the more severe mental health challenges, things like schizophrenia, which is schizophrenia is not what everybody thinks it is, by the way. Schizophrenia, I think everyone thinks, is when you have multiple personalities. Maybe people think that less these days, but that's often, traditionally what people think. Schizophrenia is more when you are splitting between what's real and what's not real. So schizophrenia comes with delusions, comes with all types of psychosis, including hallucinations and that type of thing. So this is a very severe mental health condition. It affects about 1 in 100 of the population. But there are psychiatrists now who are using keto to actually treat schizophrenia and seeing results in it, which is, again, quite mind-blowing. So the hypothesis that they're working on at the moment is that if you improve your metabolic processes, the brain is able to then operate more optimally. This is why they believe that it is helpful in treating these types of disorders. So yeah, but then also being in the state of ketosis, this metabolic state is also thought to have very significant effects with the gut microbiome. So you can see perhaps how these two things are working together. Yeah, one problem perhaps with a keto diet, a Banting diet, essentially what you're doing is you're limiting carbs, by the way. So you're having more fat, more protein, and then almost zero carbs, if that wasn't clear. One of the problems is that sometimes with diets, and this diet in particular, you can be restricting. So you can be kind of minimizing diversity, and that can be problematic. Often a healthy diet has diversity in it. So that's something to also pay attention to. And then inflammation. Inflammation is also something that has been getting a lot of attention recently, and how inflammation can aggravate to poor health and poor mental health as well. And it is thought that being in a keto state is also likely to reduce inflammation in your brain. This has been shown to have quite a significant link to poor mental health as well as inflammation in the brain. Okay, and then the last diet, this is something just a little bit less Silicon Valley, perhaps, and just a little bit more traditional. And I introduced this one just as a way of thinking, perhaps, about something that might be attainable, or it maybe takes a bit of pressure off us, because I think sometimes when you can look at having to have a very diverse diet of fermented foods, be having kombucha every morning and yogurt, that's quite hard to do for a lot of people. Likewise, with keto, you're giving up quite a lot there. If you're not filling up on carbohydrates, then you're having to do quite a lot of work in terms of getting protein in your diet. Can be expensive as well. All of the benefits might be there, but it's not easy to necessarily do. So when we speak about something like the Mediterranean diet, that shows that there are many ways of being healthy that don't necessarily have to be too restrictive or too out there. So essentially what the Mediterranean diet is, I'm sure you guys have come across it at some point. It's just the kind of cooking style and ingredients that you find in the southern Mediterranean. Quite a warm environment, things such as the south of France, south of Spain, Italy, Crete, around the warm Mediterranean there, the diets that you would find. It's not overly restrictive. These cultures are known for kind of celebrating life and doing stuff through food. Food is a big part of culture and lifestyle, like it is in many cultures. So it's not about restriction, it's about diversity, it's about fresh ingredients as well, local ingredients. And it's been shown to have lower risk factors for heart disease. This is one of the, I forget what they call it, but it's kind of the, what do they call it? The Mediterranean diet paradox, I think it's something like that. Is that, these are food, it's olive oil and pasta and olives, but it's quite the lifespan and health disease is lifespan is high, and heart disease is low. So it's kind of paradox between people who seem to just be living the high life with this diet, and I say diet in terms of the food that they're eating, not the actual restrictive diet, and having very good health outcomes as well. But then, also benefits for mental health. So we see in these areas, people who kind of indulge in these types of eating practices, decreases in depression, anxiety, also, and also increases in cognitive function. So there's something going on in that diet that can be quite beneficial. And it includes things like vegetables, fruit, herbs, nuts, whole grains, and beans, olive oil, seafood, and crucially, not a lot of sugar. So sugar is often the villain in any type of conversation about diet. That's for good reason. We have more sugar now available to us than we've ever had, probably at any point of human existence. And we unfortunately are paying the price for it in terms of our physical health, and we're paying the price for it in terms of our mental health as well. So I think what this does is it points to just a couple of basic principles. So whatever you want to take from this webinar, I would say maybe this is one thing to keep in mind. Is there are three basic principles perhaps of nutrition. Number one, avoid overeating or undereating. Pretty simple. Overeating, there's going to be lots of reasons why we do that. Part of it's going to be genetic, and then we have to find ways of protecting for that. And part of it's going to be lifestyle. Part of it might be boredom or coping. There's a big to food as well. Sometimes we use emotional eating as a thing as well. So disordered eating, whether it's overeating, undereating, this is the one thing to pay attention to. So make sure you eat enough. Don't be overly neurotic about your food. Just make sure you're getting enough. Avoid excess sugar, and then avoid processed food, and look at diversity. If you can kind of do those things, then you are probably going to be getting quite a good diet, and it takes a bit of the stress out of it as well. As dietary fads will come and they will go, and there will be the flavors of the week, as it were, and this new diet will come out, and everyone will be doing it, and everyone will be saying how it's going to change your life. What remains the same is these basic principles. We understand that food we eat, there's consequences to that. We don't have to be perfect on it. We don't have to be upset on it. But if we kind of have a general mindfulness and intentionality, just generally speaking about what we eat and follow these principles, you're probably going to find they're going to be benefits for your mental health as well. Okay, good. So those are my thoughts on nutrition and mental health. Any thoughts, any questions, any comments? We've got a few minutes if you want to throw anything in the chat. Thank you, Andre. People taking coffee daily without sugar beneficial. So I am in the business of not telling people what to do. So I would be careful of answering that. I think you can probably get that advice from a dietitian. They'll be able to tell you. But I would say if all things are equal and you're not going to feel too depressed in doing it, then yes, if you can have coffee without sugar, I would suspect that would be beneficial. But you have to trade these things off, right? If you are focusing so much on getting a healthy diet that you are undermining your quality of life, well, then you're not going to be winning there either. So yes, I think generally speaking, everything else being equal, the less sugar, the better. So Lorata, yeah, I mean, sustainability is so important, right, to any type of diet. So that's why diets don't last. That's why they have such a bad reputation as well. We come up with them on the 31st of December on New Year's resolution, and then they last about 2 weeks, then we're back to the way we were before, and we often kind of pendulum swing back. So yeah, it's about consistency, it's about sustainability, and it's not about putting over pressure on ourselves. Dawn, drinking coffee without sugar has several benefits, including improved memory, reduced risk of diabetes, heart disease, and boost metabolism, weight loss, improved performance during exercise. I'm sure that is all true. Yeah. Thank you, Cheryl. Hubert, great. Thank you. Eating better, yes. You have made an effort to eat more whole foods, stop sugar, and feel a massive difference in terms of energy and mood. Yeah, that's really interesting to see that feedback, isn't it? Mood is hard to track as well. Unless we're paying a fair amount of attention, we don't always notice when or why we're feeling good or bad. Once we start to pay attention to it and then maybe start to connect dots and patterns and say, okay, well, maybe the way I'm eating is affecting it. That allows us then to refocus on that. So Naeem, done some research and exercising in a state of ketosis would be best for fat loss. I'm sure that's right. Yeah, and you're right. There's so much research out there and interesting things on as well. So yeah, that's really interesting too. Andres, is not talking sugar a good thing? Do you mean taking sugar? I think talking sugar is a good thing. Taking sugar, yeah. I mean, I don't know if there are any benefits to sugar. If you're running a marathon and you have sugar, that's probably grapes. You probably need that at that time. Which is fructose, sugar that you get in fruit. That's normally quite relatively good for you as well, and fruit is good, and fiber that you get from that is good. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing with sugar is we are oversupplied with it, so we have to be a bit mindful, because if we had sugar every time it was offered to us, we would be a lot of sugar, and that's the research there is quite clear on how that can be for us. So at least again, I'm not a dietitian, so I wouldn't be able to say for sure. I've never heard any research that says that coffee contributes to aging. I think coffee generally is quite good for you, and it has a lot of antioxidants as well, especially if you're having it straight from the beans. So I think coffee is generally considered to be quite positive. Yes, Lindy, I think same point about coffee and sugar. If you can have it without, with coffee and sugar, if you have 4 spoons of sugar in your coffee, you're going to find it very hard to go to 0, but you might just want to go to 3 and then see how that goes, and then go to 2, and then, get used to that. Human beings are very good at habituating. We're good at that. Then go to 1 and then try maybe it without and have a bit of milk. Milk is a sweetener. Just normal milk offers a sweetening effect. And you will probably hate it for the first few days, but you, believe it or not, will learn to love it if that's something that you feel is going to be good for you. Thanks, Andrews. Yeah, I got that taken. I thought as much. Thank you, Marcia. Yeah, no, you're right. Too much fruit is not good. You're right. We often kind of think it's fine just because it's natural. It's not good. And especially if you're just having it in liquid form, because then you're not even getting any of the benefits of calorie loss and eating it. So yeah, you have to be careful of fruit. It's an important part of a balanced diet, but yeah, if you overdo it, you are going to be getting too much fructose. Raphael, you really are pressing me to give you an answer on the red wine. um, I don't know what the latest research is. There was a time where they said that red wine is very good for heart disease, a glass every night. But again, that might just be correlated with other things that might not necessarily be caused. I think Lorato is exactly what I was going to say. Everything in moderation is best. Think about balance. If you overdo anything, it's not going to be good for you. If a glass of red wine makes your life better, then you should have a glass of red wine, I would say. If it makes your life worse, then you should find ways of stopping it. We have to be reflective and accountable to ourselves in the end. Good. Okay, guys, thank you. See, I don't know about honey. My understanding is honey is quite good for you, and I think it has good benefits for microbiome diversity. But again, I wouldn't know for sure. Don't take my answers as any type of authority on this. Guys, thank you very much. Really nice to engage with you all. Thank you, Michaela Novelero, and thank you, Raphael, and thank you, everybody else. Tomasani, thank you for your contributions, and we'll pick it up again in the beginning of November. And I look forward to chatting to you all there. Bye-bye.